What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be walking you guys through my top 5 largemouth bass catches on Lake Fork. So this will be like a highlight reel. I'll walk you through the scenario of throwing big swim baits, glide baits, explain to you what I'm seeing, what I'm looking at to catch these big fish. These are the 5 biggest fish that I actually have on camera. There were a few fish that were just as big, if not bigger, than the ones you'll see in these videos. But unfortunately, the camera was not working that day or had cut off, or I forgot to turn it on. These 5 fish went for almost 43 pounds, my biggest 5. This was not on the same day, just to be clear, but these fish were all giants. I think the smallest fish in this video you'll see today is about 7.5 pounds. But let's take a look and see from here. The first thing I'm looking for when swim bait fishing is pretty much obvious stuff. Main lake points. I want deep water nearby. And I'm just looking for points that come really close to river channels, channel swings, deep water access, anywhere where those big fish can move up very easily from the deep water. As you guys can see here, I'd been throwing the glide bait and just in the back of my mind said, you know what, I'll pick up this swimmer. And that's what I did. You guys can see I just switched baits there, but same cast, been set up on this point for a while. It's all a timing deal. So these fish will feed at certain times throughout the day. So sometimes you can sit on a spot for a while and not get bit. But if you know the fish are there, which I did, and you waited out long enough, you can catch fish like this one that's coming up here. But back to what I'm looking for, you always really want wind blowing in on these points. And as you can see here, I've got the boat positioned in a manner that the wind's blowing directly on the point, and it just helps break up the bait. I think it allows the fish to commit more. And now I'm hooked up here, as you guys can see. But I believe the biggest fish in the lake always live in the deepest water or have access to the deepest water. So I know you guys have heard me mention it before, but I like fishing the south end of lakes, mid and south end of lakes, anywhere I go in the country. I just feel like it has, on average, the biggest class of fish. I probably played this fish a little too much. I learned so much going out there about swim bait fishing and glide bait fishing, and just being able to repeat it and do it over and over. You get those repetitions and it's like practice. But I probably played it a little too much with all of the stumps in Lake Fork, but down here there wasn't a ton, so it worked out really well. This thing was a tank.
That's gotta be an
7 pounds, 13 ounces. So I was pretty close when I guessed. I said it was got to be 8. This is a different day here. Again, you can't really see the point as much, but there's a point off on the right side of the screen right here that sticks out into the water. The wind wasn't blowing super strong. As you guys can see, there's still some ripple and wind. And as you saw at the beginning of this clip, I pointed out that I saw a gizzard shad jump. You always want to be looking around where you're fishing and using your eyes just to scan around, see if there's any bird activity, bait activity, if they're splashing, anything that can give you a clue to what's going on beneath the surface, and not always just relying on your electronics to tell you. So as you guys say there, I saw a gizzard shad jump, and normally when they jump out of the water like that, they're being chased. So I dug in the rod locker and grabbed a topwater. And topwater had not worked before this, any day before this. And it was just a hunch. Like I said, I saw with my eyes something and I picked it up, and literally first cast, I ended up getting hooked up on this giant. It ate it once but missed it, or it tried to eat it, and then it smoked it. That's pretty cool. Huge splash. Got it that time. And again, there's nothing special about this point. The river channel just swung by it. I mean, if you looked at a map, it's pretty easy to find. And there's really, again, nothing special about it in terms of the point itself. I just would always look for points with wind on them. And that changes day to day. It depends on which way the wind is going. And sometimes you need to bounce through 10, 20 points in a day before you find fish. There were many days that I would go 4, 5, 6, 7 hours without a bite. And then you catch 5 fish off the same point that are all bigger than 5 pounds. So it's definitely a game that you got to play. It's a run and gun style of fishing. That's what I like and how I like to fish. And it definitely pays off. I do not like fighting fish on small treble hooks. And even though this is a big top water, it's still a lot smaller treble hooks than if you were using like that line through swim bait. So unfortunately, you can't put too much heat on them, but you got to think about the timber and everything as well. So for this rod here, for my top water, I use braid. You cast further, 0 stretch. I've had zeros issues with that for these largemouth bass. But again, trying not to pull those little treble hooks out.
Let's freaking go.
I was fired up about that one. Always cool to catch I think this is an 8+ on top water. And again, just to see it, watch it, miss it once, and then come back and eat it. So cool. Yeah, absolute giant. That top water plug, by the way, is like 7.5, 8 inches long. It's big. So that fish was giant. Yeah, 8 pounds, 5 ounces. All right, so here's another day. As you guys can see here off to the left-hand side of the screen, this is a point that runs way out. This is when the lake was low, so you probably can't see it now. But the point one runs way out here. The wind, and you can see it's much rougher today. The wind's blowing. You can see the waves. I mean, in the front of the boat's moving, a couple feet up and down. But same thing. Look for windy points. This is a very obvious point. Again, if you look at a map, you'd be able to see it just fine. There's nothing special to it. And these fish were just absolutely stacked up here and just cast after cast. That's really cool. It looked like the bait, if we go back here, it looked like the bait comes out of the fish's mouth right there. You kind of see the swim bait flying out, but that's the beauty of that line through. There's the bait right there, you can see. And it made me nervous real quick thinking I lost it, but that's the beauty of the line through, is that bait slides up the line and allows you to just fight the fish with that 2/0 treble hook directly to your 20-pound line and just keep cranking them in, and they don't have any leverage with that big bait, with that big line through swim bait, opposed to a glide bait to throw the hook. You can see the front of the boat just rocking. The front of the boat is covered with water. The wind was ripping this day. A lot of times the best days you'll have throwing a big swim bait and glide bait can be the windiest and most dangerous out there. So you definitely have to be cognizant of the weather, the wind, and just make sure you're being safe out there, especially on a lake like with Fork, with a bunch of stumps, and it gets rocking and rolling. But a lot of times, if you can find the time to get out there and be safe while doing it, those are the best days, and you can have some of the best days doing it. You can see here I got my full windsuit on. It was ripping. Looks like a 7+, 7.5 something. That was see, yeah, 7.10. That's a long fish. If that fish was fat at all, that fish would probably be 8.5, 9+. If that fish was really fat, it could be a double digit probably. It was super long. Another scenario here, same thing. I just set the boat up a little differently, positioning. I would normally come into the point and let my talons, I've got 12-foot talons, I would drop them down as deep as possible so that the waves were hitting the back of my boat, like where the motor is. And then I would cast forward towards the point with the wind. So I could cast all the way up to like literally 6 inches, sometimes shallower of water, and then just work the bait back. Here, I was offshore on like a deep hump, or I'm sorry, not a deep hump. It was still a shallow hump, but I was deeper to where I set up. So I used spot lock, and that's the reason for the boat position difference. But as you guys can see here, I was still casting with the wind towards where the wind was crashing in on that shallow hump, and again hooked up with that line through swim bait. Always have your net ready when you're swim bait fishing. I've made that mistake a few times, and it hasn't cost me, I should say, but it's a lot easier when you have it already, especially when the wind and the waves and everything are rocking. Golly, that's a monster too. It was just stupid. Look at the size of that thing. I think that was a 9 something. 9.1, 9.2 maybe. Thing was so fat. 9.5. Same thing here, offshore hump. Still pretty shallow up there. I'm casting into probably like 3 feet of water, and then working. This is the glide bait. But again, you guys can see wind, anywhere with wind. Look for your humps and points, pretty shallow. That's where the bait's gonna get pushed on by this wind. And just keep cycling. If you guys don't get bit within the first, 15, 20 minutes, move to the next one. Move to the next point. I promise you, if you just keep doing that, you will eventually be successful. It's just a run and gun game. The glide bait was a little bit different in that you're kind of reeling steadily, and then you guys can see I would hit it every once in a while and just reel faster for 1 or 2 reels. And what that does is it makes the glide bait shoot out to the side, and like textbook, that's when this fish hits. This is the biggest one by far, I believe. This one was almost 10 pounds. You can see I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. This fish was giant. Couldn't move it. Locked me up a few times. Again, probably played it way too long, especially with a glide bait, because they have the leverage to throw that. But when you're by yourself, you got to do what you got to do. This place. That glide bait, guys, is 8 inches, by the way. It shows you how big that fish is. Hook fell right out. You just gotta keep them coming. Look at the size of that thing. Beast. Yeah, that is absolutely nuts. What a monster fish. But yeah, that's my those are my top 5 biggest bass on camera that I have at Lake Fork during that trip. And hopefully you guys learned a little bit on how I was setting up, how I was positioning, what I was doing. Again, those 5 together, I know they weren't on the same day, but if you put them together, they're about 43 pounds. So my best single day was about 36 pounds, which is absolutely nuts. But these are about 43 pounds put together, which is even wilder if you think that if you guys watch the Bassmaster, Lee Livesey had about 43 pounds in one day. So if you put all of these fish together, that's what he had in one day, which is absolutely wild. So this lake pumps out the giants. Throw the big baits, throw the big swim baits, the line through. You guys can be successful while doing it. And just practice or just follow these kind of tips and tricks. There's really, it's not a lot to it. It's no secret. You just got to get confident in doing it. Like I said, these points and humps are not secrets or special or anything. You just got to rotate enough of them and eventually you'll be successful. But thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let me know what you think of this video and let me know what your PB bass is. Largemouth, smallmouth, or spot. Let me know down in the comments below. This fish right here was my personal best. It's 9 pounds, 9 ounces. I'm still chasing that double digit. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later.